Good evening. Calling the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Tuesday, November 5th at 7:03. Roll call, Commissioner Wirtz.
Here.
Commissioner Hudson.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Lovingood.
Here.
Commissioner Boyer is out, and myself, Commissioner Romine, is also here. We have one person signed up for public comment, Daniel Thornton.
Hi, my name's Dan Thornton. I live at 111 Hilton Street. Wanted to comment on the notification zones, item 5I. If you look at the packet, there's some good information in there. The last page shows some comparisons of what other cities here do and how developers pay for those notifications. That's all good stuff. I really liked page 71, the next to last page, which shows what a 200-foot, 300-foot, 500-foot, and 1,000-foot look like for Durango Farms, I presume it is. Mm-hmm. One thing that's not noted is any difference for building heights, taking that into account. I think that makes a big impact on what the development impacts around it. If you went to 500 feet, I would be notified for Durango Farms. That would be okay with me. If I wasn't notified, I don't know if I'd be that upset. It's a little bit away from me. It's a kind of a neighborhood away. But the hotel right here, it's about 1,200 feet from my house. And I'll be able to see it from my house. My whole backyard, I'll be able to see it. Every window in the back of my house will see that hotel. And I'm way out of the notification zone. So I think possibly something like scaling the notification zone for buildings over 4 stories, something like that I think would really be appropriate. So I just want you to consider that when you come to that topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, we have one more person for public comment, Nancy Woodcock.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Nancy Woodcock, 206 Dana Drive, Lakeside Estates. I'm getting very familiar with some of the processes of how you plan and zone, but I don't know all of it. And I would like to know if there's some place that I can look at where it shows the steps of when you're planning to zone an area. What are you looking at? What are you checking for, encompassing environmental everything? So is there a place that I can go to see what the steps of that are like somewhere? And also I just would like to, for clarity's sake, I think I've spoken to a couple of you before on some of the meetings. I see that there's a couple of the Planning and Zoning Committee that comes into the City Council, but I never see City Council come into the meetings here. Am I wrong on that? 2 questions. You're not allowed to answer?
Not during public comment.
Okay. Well, those are some things that if I have my phone number I can give and my email, I would like to have a couple answers, because I would like to see, we've been talking a lot about transparency in the City Council meeting, and I have a gut feeling that I'm not, that there are some things that are happening that seems like the 2 different units are not communicating correctly or being transparent to you guys as well, because it seems like everything's a surprise to them. And I find that very disturbing to be here in Hutto. I am a super voter. I stay on top of the Watchman, and I've been wherever I've lived. I've always voted, and I'd like to see a clearer transparency of communication to all of our citizens here in Hutto and in our state of Texas. So I hope and pray that we can communicate better, and I'm a pretty skeptical person, and it seems to me that sometimes you wonder if you've heard in sales, there's the good guy and bad guy. and that other guy's always the bad guy, and then that one's the bad guy, and you wonder if the two is playing and we're being like ignored and stupid about things. But let's go on the sake of saying that everyone's being up and up. That's what I want to say. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
She had an agenda item she wanted to speak of, but she wasn't going to be staying. I didn't know when or what you wanted to do.
Veronica Johnson, you could speak now.
My name is Veronica Johnson. I live at 300 Foxglove in the Glenwood neighborhood. That's right on the other side of the proposed Cottonwood Creek neighborhood. Not only do I live in the Glenwood neighborhood, I'm also the HOA events coordinator. And I want to make sure that nothing in the Cottonwood Creek neighborhood gets built into that green space or that floodplain that's going to be between us. My two main concerns are being wildlife and flooding. We have had a lot of construction in Glenwood recently, and every time a new section of homes comes up, we get a lot of wildlife in there, and it always messes up the rains. The part of Glenwood I'm currently in hasn't had much issue with floods, but the more we build, the more the area is going to flood, and I don't want our neighborhood to flood. Everything that I do HOA-based for the neighborhood is either at the park or the pool or the parking lot that are just on the other side of that green space. I'm concerned that homes being built in that floodplain or too close to the green space will cause more flooding, more wildlife to go into that area as well. And that will essentially cause those event spaces to be less desirable for us to have our kids there or to have our trunk or treat or National Night Out. Those are the neighborhood event spaces. So I urge you all to take a closer look at where exactly things are going to be built and that we don't kind of encroach more into the green space and the flood spaces that we shouldn't, to keep that from bothering wildlife and the flood zone areas and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And we have one more person signed up, but they're going to speak at the public hearing. So moving on to agenda items 5A, consideration and possible action on the meeting minutes from the regular scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on October 8th, 2019. And I will entertain thoughts.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Wirtz and a second by Commissioner Hudson. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. All right. 5B, consideration of a public hearing and possible recommendation on the proposed Mustang Creek revision. Number 1, preliminary plat, 170.655 acres, more or less, of land, 507 residential lots located on FM 1660 North. We do have someone signed up for this item, but why don't we have the presentation by staff first, and then we'll open up public hearing.
Sure. So this is a subdivision that you guys have seen before. It is just north of Rivers Crossing along 1660, just south of the new HISD site. So this is the proposed section in which they're making the changes, and so I'll get into that. So the old version is on the left. You see there's 4 lots on the north side. What they're proposing to do is add a 5th lot to the north side and then do the same thing on the south side of this road, just add an additional lot. And so with this proposal, they're adding 2 residential lots and then 8 landscape lots. And so you can see around the edge of, say, like lot number 11, there's a landscape there, so that's going to be a landscape lot. So it'll be a nice landscaped area as you enter the subdivision, basically. We did get 4 responses to the public hearing, 1 in favor and 3 opposed. The opposed ones are similar to last time, which were concerns about drainage and things like that, that are more so from Rivers Crossing that are on the south side. And then 1 from Jonah was opposed, and then the 1 in favor was from the ISD.
How many were sent out?
Sir?
How many notices were sent out?
Ooh, I can find out. Um, 11.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. 31.
31?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But as the revised preliminary plat meets the requirements as adopted with the UDC, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval to City Council.
All right, and we will go ahead and open the public hearing for this at 7:14. And again, we have 1 person signed up. Lucas Evans, if you can come and state your name and address.
I'm going to wait until 5F. Made the wrong number, sorry.
Okay. I thought it was kind of weird that you were doing this one, but I thought,
So
okay.
did I. So did I.
I was like, what?
Okay.
All right. So with that, having no one else signed up for public hearing for this one, we will close the public hearing at 7:14 and move on to discussion by the commission.
I have a question. Is this impacting their dedicated land for parkland?
No, sir. So the lots, all the lots that they're changing with this plat occur on the north side of that dedication, and so none of them are impacted by any of the dedication that was previously agreed upon.
Okay, so these weren't part of that dedication?
No, I think
and-
they looked at it and they realized they could add in a couple more lots based on some kind of just open space, and they could still meet the code and everything like that, so they went with it.
And they're still meeting the lot requirements for the rest of the lot size requirements?
Oh
I
yeah,
should say.
yeah. I mean, all of these lots are 50 feet in width, so
Okay.
They're plenty wide enough.
All right. Other questions, comments?
My comment is we looked over all this before on preliminary plat originally, and this seems like a minor change, so I recommend approval as recommended by staff with their comments.
I'll second it.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Clark and a second by Commissioner Wirtz. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Going on to 5C, consideration and possible recommendation on the proposed Cross Creek Phase 2 final plat, 21.33 acres more or less of land, 107 residential lots located off of County Road 199.
So this is the second phase of the new Meritage development going in. You can kind of see from the vicinity map, it's just south of the first phase. So they're getting further into the development. 107 single-family lots, 1 Greenlink lot. 54 of the lots are 45 feet and 53 are 50 feet. And so this is the lot breakdown. You can see on the north side are the already final platted lots, and then on the south side will be the third phase. And with that, staff recommends approval as it meets all the requirements in the PUD and the UDC.
All right. Open up to discussion by the commission.
I don't have any.
In the UDC, we have what, a 40-foot minimum width? Okay.
Yeah, and this one, because it's a PUD, they had certain lot width standards they had to meet, and so they're meeting those with this.
I do have a question. And this is just for my general knowledge. I'm really getting concerned about us approving subdivisions with 40-foot, 45-foot lots. That's really small.
I think it's getting too many starter homes only.
Right.
And then
It's too small. I don't know if there's something that we can do to increase that or something, but I took a drive out to Brooklands, and I am totally shocked at the product. Number one, the product that's going in there, and number two, how close those homes are together.
So, I mean, that one's a little different because it's smart code.
And I understand that, but 45 feet is 45 feet.
Sure.
And you basically have house on top of house.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's kind of the goal of the smart code, is to have a really dense development. A standard subdivision, if you're wanting to, say, make a minimum lot width of 50 feet, we can look at doing that, but that's a code requirement. And so right now our code says you can do 40 feet, so if anybody wants to do 40 feet, we have to allow it.
Okay, and I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, I think as a commission we need to look at that a little bit stronger.
because we want to have that next level of home.
Right.
So you've got generational growing up when they move to the starter home to the next home. They don't leave and go to Black Hawk or Round Rock or other places because we don't really have a community like that. And I think that's kind of.
Could it be
helped
something
a
that
little
when we look at the code, that
It's some
maybe it's a
ratio or something.
percentage?
That's what I
as
said, a
opposed-
ratio.
Yeah, a percentage ratio. I like that.
I mean, I'm
You
probably
know, because
comfortable
I don't
with
think
that,
we want to
but-
say no more of this ever, but
Yeah,
And
I
I
would
fully-
say that this particular PUD was very well thought out, and part of it was going to be a percentage. There are going to be some smaller lots, there will be some larger lots. There are certainly some larger lots on the south end of that and along their green space and amenity center. So this is not just a 45-foot section subdivision, nor is the Brooklands. What you see coming up is really that first section, and then they will have larger lots. I think in the Brooklands there is even 80-foot lots.
Okay.
To make their numbers work, you do have to have that mix. But certainly with what we're looking at upcoming with an area plan on our east side is going to be some of the economics of why you do want to go a little bit more dense, just because even a 60-foot lot does not guarantee that you're not going to have a starter home. That's what we've had the majority of in Hutto. If you look on the south side of 79, a lot of those lots are 50 and 60 feet, but you still have a 1,400 square foot home. You're still not getting that price point. Just because you have a larger lot doesn't mean you're always getting the price point that we would be hoping for. Even then, a price point of maybe 350 is still not going to get the city to a point where 350 is actually paying us taxes that makes the city money. They're still not clearing. They're still in the red. That's why we're having so much commercial development have to subsidize our single-family development. I think it's definitely a discussion that we need to have as far as we go into our comprehensive planning efforts in the future, because there's a lot of economics that go into what kind of house can you get on that lot. I mean, you could look at Mueller if you compared us to that. They have a lot of 40-foot lots that have 600,000 price points. So it's not always about the size of the lot, it's also about the size of the market and the demand. And so I think that's what we're going to start seeing once you get the William Lyon development coming online, is some of the townhomes are probably going to be going just at or more than what we're seeing some of the starter homes come at. So I think there's going to be a lot more discussion on the economics and the expansion of the city of Hutto and the products that we're offering, so that we make sure that we're offering a lot of housing choice and a lot of price points with the employers that are coming in, but also make sure that we're being fiscally responsible for the city of Hutto for the long term. It's not just about the 50-foot lot. We need to make sure that we're price point, but then also price point for the city, because those are also depreciating assets as far as the roads and the water lines and the wastewater lines and the rest of the things that we have to take on as maintenance.
Now, one of the things that concerns me about the higher density, the 45-foot lots, 50 lots, is increased density typically means increased traffic. And I haven't seen us go in and say, hey, we're putting 2,000 homes over here. What are we doing with the roads in connection with that development? And I think that needs to be part of the discussion.
And that's all reviewed by our engineering team. They review the TIAs and things of that. So if there's a need for right-of-way or additional roadways or egress, anything like that, that's all reviewed by our engineering team, and they make a recommendation based off of that.
But
And then similar to what the planning side does, is we go back to our land use maps that have all been approved by council. They would be going back to their transportation and their mobility plans that we've all had done. The mobility plan was actually just done in 2018. So there's certain, I know that you were heavily involved with that, but certainly I think there's going to be times where we're going to have to look at alternate modes. That's not really a thing in Texas all the time, but staff certainly is actually involved with Cap Metro and some of those other, and seeing what else we can do now that Pflugerville is getting a little bit more involved, and Round Rock obviously has their own line now as well. So those are better and really best practices in the industry that we're looking at getting, but we can't get to that threshold until we have a certain number of citizens here that might be able to use it.
That's great. Well, I say we move on from that. It's an academic discussion today and talk about this approval for this one. So I would like to go ahead and make a proposal that we accept this final plat for this phase 2 as written.
I second that.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Clark and a second by Commissioner Robinson on 5C. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. 5D, consideration and possible recommendation on the proposed Mager Meadows Phase 2 amended plat, 22.441 acres, more or less of land, 95 residential lots located north of Mager Lane and Groves Lane.
All right, so this is Mager Meadows. You can see by the vicinity of the map its location. What they're proposing to do with this plat is they're not changing any of the lots. What they're asking to do is go from a 5-foot internal public utility easement to a 3-foot, which is similar to what they've done in their previous phases. And so this is something that we're actually no longer even requiring anymore, because everybody runs their utilities in the front or the back of the lots now. Nobody runs them in between the lots. They've asked for 3. And so that's just kind of what they're getting at with this. And so with that, staff recommends approval as the change, the proposed change still meets our code. And so with that, staff recommends approval.
Okay. Open up to the commission for discussion.
I see in the background information that main access to this phase will be from Mager, and secondary access for this phase will be from Lincoln, which is actually Carroll. It will dump onto Carroll. That is the only way to access Lincoln. So, secondary access from Lincoln means you're driving through 2 neighborhoods to get to this construction, Mager Meadows and Carroll Meadows. Is there a way we can direct access from Groves, which is not built yet, but that access is Limmer? That way we don't have construction vehicles going through 2 neighborhoods. They're going through 0 neighborhoods.
Groves. Can you orient me?
Groves would be on the north side of the area. It would be just west of Carroll Meadows.
We can certainly, it'd be hard to stipulate it only because if it's not part of Mager Meadows and it's not part of a prior phase to phase 2, because this has already been approved, not necessarily, because we have to allow them to develop in the manner in which they came in. We could certainly put an asterisk on there as more of an FYI that if there is the possibility to have them use different accesses and not come through the subdivision, certainly we will. That's always the goal of staff during the pre-con meetings or pre-construction meetings, is to have them come through the least populated areas as possible. Certainly we understand that during school time we're going to also be battling with bus traffic. So it's always on the forefront of all of the minds of staff, but we could do an FYI, not really a condition of approval, but something of just, hey, make sure that if this street does come in, that this is another mode of transportation for the construction. But because this has already been developed, they could be out there moving dirt, selling lots, doing everything. This is really just a manner of reducing a public utility easement. So I would be cautious in doing that, because that could preclude them from their existing development rights.
Anything
motion
else?
every one of them tonight.
I'll make a motion that we approve what 5D as written.
5D, yeah.
As written.
I second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Wirtz and a second by Commissioner Lovingood. Any other discussion?
And I just want to clarify that's without any change to the access, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll amend my motion to include that, yes.
That we,
Put an FYI.
FYI.
as an FYI.
Okay.
And Commissioner Lovingood, are you fine with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Wirtz and a second by Commissioner Lovingood to approve 5D with an FYI to make routes be as going through as low traffic areas as possible when they become available. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Sorry, I was trying to-
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. 5E, consideration and possible recommendation on the proposed Star Ranch Section 7, Phase 8 final plat, 28.458 acres more or less of land, 116 residential lots, located within the ETJ of Hutto on Winterfield Drive at Star Ranch Boulevard.
All right, so Star Ranch Final Plat, Section 7, Phase 8. With this, they're proposing 116 single-family lots, 3 landscape lots, water and wastewater to be provided by the municipal utility district, same as the rest of the development. This is the lot layout, which you guys have also, or I think most of you all have seen the prelim for this. It's probably been a little while, but it came before you guys. And with that, all the comments have been addressed, except for there's a typo in the city signature block. But with that, staff recommends approval with that condition.
Okay. Open up to the commission for discussion.
I have nothing.
All right, then I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion we accept 5E as written.
All right.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Robinson and a second by Commissioner Hudson. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. 5F, consideration of a public hearing and possible recommendation on the proposed ordinance amendment for the Cottonwood Creek Planned Unified Development, 370.36 acres more or less of land located on CR 199.
All right, so
And we're going to give the discussion first. He's going to give the presentation. That way, if there's any further questions, then you
have the knowledge we have, and then
Right.
we can go for it from there.
and then we'll open up the public hearing.
all right, so the northwest square of this map is currently in the annexation process and will be annexed on Thursday. But just to orient you guys, this is just east of the Cross Creek planned unit development subdivision that you guys saw earlier tonight, south of 79. So with this 370.36 total acres, they are dedicating 83 acres of parkland to the city, which is that portion that runs along, I'm drawing a blank on the subdivision, Glenwood, I'm sorry, along the Glenwood subdivision. And so that will be dedicated to the city as parkland. As you can see by this, the proposal is in conformance with the future land use map. And so this is the kind of land use plan for this. You can see 987 total single-family lots are proposed. Of those, 50% are 50 feet in width. And you can see by the different colors what those mean. And so, a lot of the comments and concerns we got were whether or not there would be development adjacent to the Glenwood subdivision. And you can see even the closest lots are going to be 70 feet in width. And so across that 83 acres that are being dedicated to the city, then you'll hit the 70 feet lots. And And so with that, the PUD is consistent with the desired flexibility guidelines of the existing Cottonwood Creek district, but also provides additional guidelines to continue the patterns and growth within the district. The proposed amendments give the development more flexibility in design. The uses within the existing PUD will not change. Single-family residential has been the plan the entire time. They are asking for single-family attached, and those are going to be only on the 60 and 70-foot lots, and they're proposing 177 of them. The proposed Cottonwood Creek PUD amendment does also contain a large dedication, the 83 acres, to the city for open space. The proposed PUD amendments provide clear and concise standards for dense development with active open space. They do have design guidelines in there that provide cohesive pedestrian-oriented development. The proposed development includes increased street connectivity and overall site guidelines that are designed to minimize hazards while promoting a sense of community. The new standards will not negatively affect the health, safety, and general welfare of the community. The proposed amendments do not affect existing plats, and the development will continue to meet code standards. The proposed amendments do not affect the existing infrastructure in place. They are actually dedicating additional right-of-way for the County Road 132 expansion / overpass. And the proposed amendments do not allow for non-compatible development. It'll all be single-family, whether that be attached or single-family detached. And all new construction must conform to the design guidelines in the previously approved PUD and this PUD. We did receive 8 responses. 7 were opposed and 1 was in favor. A lot of those oppositions came from the Glenwood subdivision that were concerned about having new development adjacent to theirs. And so with that, having that 83 acres dedicated to the city, there's going to be a large buffer there that there won't be homes adjacent to them. And I want to just kind of pull this back up for you as well. But staff finds that the proposed PUD amendments for the Cottonwood Creek Plan Unit development meet the intent of all provisions for PUD review as listed in 10.203.10.3 of the UDC. Therefore, staff recommends that the commission recommend approval of the PUD amendment to City Council.
Okay.
And I just kind of wanted to have this land use plan up for you.
Yes, if you can keep that up.
Yep.
And before we go and have the commission start, I'd like to open public hearing on 5F at 7:35. And at this time, call up Mr. Evans.
How are y'all doing? My name is Lucas Evans. I live in that small trapezoid in the middle of all of this.
If you can do the address.
3750 County Road 132 South.
Thank you.
This used to be my family's farm. Developer went around to all the dying family and made them sign it away. We got $40,000 a piece for it. I'm directly asking y'all because I've been spun around and referenced back to y'all for Carl Stern, as it is now, is going to take about 1/6 of my property and go through the largest tree on my property that was planted 200 years ago by my great-great-grandfather. And frankly, it's just not going to happen. So unless y'all want that road to dead end, I'm just asking that y'all move it 65 feet north. There's plenty of space there, and everybody's kind of put it on y'all. I even had Lennar and the BGE engineer out 3 weeks ago, and they were like, yeah, we don't care, man. We're all getting paid for this. Talk to y'all. And it doesn't seem like this is going to affect anybody. Might give us a little more green space and save a good... It's not going to... I mean... however y'all want to look at it, that road is either going to go through and around, and that's great, or it's just going to stop right there. And I do believe in the future of Hutto, and east-west corridor of Carl Stern is very important. And long-term, we're probably going to donate our house as a historical marker and a museum for the city and a botanical garden. And I've been talking with Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center about this open space, maybe actually preserving some prairie land and giving us a sense of place, because as it is now, it's a sea of homes. Everything northeast of 79 and 1660, as it stands, is going to be a sea of houses and roofs. And the plat that I've seen, FEMA and the new floodplain is a sham. And I think we need to seriously get together and look at this. Y'all, if we're concerned, as she is, and I echo her reality, like these houses are within like me to you from the creek's edge. And I've seen these creeks get way out of their banks. And the engineer was like, oh, that ditch right there. I took him up on our balcony to look it over. And, this is what y'all are about to destroy. And that ditch I've seen wash down wash machines and tires and get 10 feet wide and 100 feet, 10 feet deep, 100 feet wide. So I have spent a lifetime, a dissertation, starting a company and offering free services to the city of Hutto, and I invite all of y'all, please, and I'll send out an email that whenever this comes up, I'm going to try to coincide with the last approval of, something, and we just need to all get on the same page about what we're doing towards the east, because it seems like there's just all broken different things. This is really unique land, and she's right, the wildlife. I mean, I've seen Canadian geese land right where that road, Branson Boulevard, is what we call a wash, but it was actually, a alluvial creek right there, and it's just insane and really hard. But I'll really just ask y'all to move that road 100 feet north, which seems completely in everybody's power to do. And Lennar gave me their blessing, so I doubt they're going to be here, but I was hoping that maybe they would. But yes, I will invite y'all to this presentation before the city council. It's going to be great, and we just need to understand what the Blackland Prairie really is before we just make this huge eastern campaign of. I don't know. That's also the prettiest part of the property where they have that little orange deal, and they're just going to clear that out, and it's flood zone. Oh, we're just going to build it up. So just please consider, all I'm asking is 100 feet north, and then come to my presentation at the city council. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And we will close the public hearing at 7:40 and open it up to the commission.
Couple of comments. For staff, the maps on page 18 through 21, even under super heavy magnification, they're not legible.
That's not the...
Right, that's why I gave you, and there's an additional land use plan in the packet.
Mm-hmm.
There should...
Yeah,
at the very back. So that
you gave us the color-coded
yeah,
one.
so 19, 20, 18, 19, and 20 are the surveys.
Right, but they're completely illegible.
In the printed version, but I know in the digital version.
In the digital, I magnified it up all the way. You can't read what it says.
We'll double check how they were uploaded, but
Okay.
they should have been able to, because I know internally they were good to go.
Yeah, I was blowing it up, and I've got
Is there
letters
a
this big,
specific
but I can't tell
question
what
on
they
the
are.
survey portion, or is it on the land use portion?
No, that was a comment. I could, under magnification, I couldn't read them.
Right, I was going to say the same thing. I was looking at it, and I'm like zooming in, and it's
Yeah.
like, what am I looking at? So.
And
Now the other maps were fine.
Okay.
Just those ones, for whatever reason, they were smaller and very poor.
We'll get those.
Copy over.
18 and 19?
Yeah, we'll get those corrected before we go to city council. So.
Okay, yeah, just could not read them. The other comment I have is I'm still not comfortable with that Phase 8, the orange portion that has the FEMA floodplain intrusion. And I'm wondering, we have the engineer here, will altering that intrusion affect anything downstream? And
So-
has there been a study or any sort of analysis?
There has not yet been, but again, this is just the zoning document, but if, let's
This is
just
not
put-
platting or anything. This
Right.
is just
So-
they're annexing that R020578
Right, at the far
into the
northwest
PUD.
corner.
That's all.
Right.
This is not a plotting of.
Well, so there are some changes. So this was originally approved back in 2006, and so this is the new version. I will say that, like Ashley was saying, this is just the use, and so and Sam can probably speak more to the process of adjusting that floodplain so that it doesn't have any downstream impact. But they're not. I mean, they're legally not allowed to do that. Like, they have legal obligations to make sure that
It's
they're
just a
not
concept. It's not saying what
affecting
it is.
anybody downstream.
Sam, if you can state who you are.
And then in the meantime, if there is a possibility, I can try to pull up the 2006 and you think this is bad? You'll see what happened in 2006, which they're legally allowed to build on. So
Okay.
this is worlds better. I think staff worked on this for at least 10 months with the developer. Lennar has been stellar to work with on this, to be able to get a little bit more acreage, but to be able to spread it out a little bit more, and then also then modify their plans to meet our changing mobility plan needs as well. So there's definitely, they have legal rights to go ahead and develop this in a much worse manner than what we're looking at right now.
So my name is Samuel Ray. I'm the city engineer. I could speak a little bit to the development, that section within the floodplain there. That line, that black dash line, is a FEMA floodplain line. In order to do any development inside that area, you have to go through a rigorous permitting process that involves the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers. It is intensely studied, modeled, and per the City of Hutto ordinances, you have to model all of the upstream contributing drainage basin in fully developed drainage conditions. We'll be looking at the increased rainfall intensities, the Atlas 14 rainfall intensities as well, and ensuring that any development, any fill in that area will not be adversely impacting any of the surrounding area, particularly, especially the houses on the other side of the creek, the existing homes, existing structures, roads, bridges, all those.
So this development isn't just meeting city standards, it's meeting state and federal standards as well when it's developed.
Yes, that is a FEMA floodplain line, yes.
Okay.
I do understand his comments and, trying to save a 200-year-old tree, if Lennar is able to do their road, but this is not a zoning plat where we can even discuss that. That's not where we're at today. And I do understand your point, and you should bring it up, and maybe, if people are that happy about saving a 200-year tree and having a plaque at the bottom of it and making it like part of their park inside their development, that's something they can do. It's nothing we can discuss today, enforce, and imply. So I understand your plight. I've had a ranch that I've owned since the 1850s in Texas, so I understand about the love of the land and keeping stuff like that. But there's nothing I can do today to even broach that subject. We're just talking about annexing the R020578 into this PUD that they already own the land, but they're just wanting to be able to build single-family homes on that section. So I just wanted to put it out there that it's not like we're not hearing you and doing nothing about it. That's not even at this point where we can discuss it, and I don't even think your tree is in the R020578, unless I'm mistaken from what you were describing.
Well, in that Carl Stearns right here.
Right. So.
Yeah, but all we're doing is adding this.
I know.
And there are some other changes. So they're
Right.
changing some of the lot sizes. So the previously approved plan from 2006 had 50s and 60s. So what they've done is they've added 40s and 70s. They've rearranged some of the thoroughfares to make it flow better and kind of function better. They're dedicating more right-of-way to the city for the County Road 132 expansion. I think the acreage for parkland dedication's actually gone up as well. I think it was in the 60s previously. And so there are more than just that one change. But like as you were saying, Commissioner Clark, this is just a conceptual use. This isn't the final, everything's going to go in this exact location, because as they get into the platting and things like that, the location of the roads might shift a little bit and things like that. And so that can be a discussion we have with the developer as far as adjusting that road. But for now, all we're looking at is an approval of the zoning or a recommendation on the zoning, I should say. Sorry.
I did have a question. Do we ever have anything in the city that says like a tree over a certain diameter has to be saved. Because if there is something like that, maybe that could help. So it's just a question.
And I unfortunately, so we do have that. Unfortunately, that property is not actually in the city.
Okay.
Right, the property with the tree is not in the city yet. So.
Do that, but I just want the road to dead in there. We'll do whatever we have to do, but it just doesn't make sense to end the road. Right. You know, so obviously you want it to continue east.
But at some point it will be in the city, correct?
You're gonna say the trees.
I mean, potentially. So we did offer the property owner a development agreement in lieu of annexation, and they declined. Over like last year, November, December timeframe. But I mean, yeah, at some point the idea through our thoroughfare plan is that Carlstone would continue east.
I think back to Commissioner Hudson's previous point, that does follow along with the transportation plan, the future land use map, and then the mobility plan that was updated in 2018. But the transportation and the future land use map have been in existence since the early 2000s in that exact. So we do have a little bit of a quandary that we're requiring developers to meet future plans that have been set by councils and prior councils, and then we're saying we don't want them to meet that. That is a little difficult to do, and that those are our guiding documents that we give developers and that everybody's able to see online as the guiding documents for the city and how we're going to develop or how we want to develop with council strategic goals in mind.
So my question is, like, in future land plots, will we have the ability to discuss the road at all, or is that just going to be, like...
This road actually, I think for Carl Stern, actually mirrors what was on the 2006 plan. So there are some things that we are able to ask for as a staff and as a city in opening this back up, but they still have their legal rights. They have a final platted massive subdivision that doesn't really meet our current standards and honestly does not even meet the fire code that was approved in 2006. Seeing that plan, we called it the MAC project because it was Meadows of Cottonwood Creek, approved in 2006, didn't meet fire code. That's a little alarming. And so to have a developer willing to come back in and voluntarily change things for the better to better mirror what council has set as their priorities and what our goals are and what the UDC says, I think says a lot for the developer and the development in total. So there are some things, like Branson Pass actually used to just kind of straight through, and it was going to be very similar to how 1660 South functions, and it actually separates an entire subdivision, and you have a subdivision existing on both sides of basically a 5-lane road in some sections. And so what we looked at is there any way to make that not function the same way so that we're not subdividing a master plan subdivision with a really large thoroughfare and trying to get 132 to come on the outside, because this was going to be the 1660 132 was essentially going to go through that, knowing that the overpass was going to go in. That was going to be a little bit more of a transportation nightmare, I think, for the neighborhood.
So my question is, so we get further down the road and we realize that some of the development causes flooding in other areas that we weren't foreseeing, or the development didn't quite understand how that was going to work, impact the area. What do we have, if any, recourse for that kind of stuff?
I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but with all the modeling, I mean, if they're getting their modeling wrong, then we've got some bigger issues coming down the pipeline. A lot of what we're, I think, focusing on right now, or what we're feeling right now as a city, is that Georgetown and Gerald have started to develop so much that we're getting a lot of that downstream impact from other cities, not just because of Hutto developing, but because Williamson County has been growing exponentially.
So with the drainage question, a professional engineer will be doing the design, will be stamping it with his seal and signing it. So he's putting his license on the line when he's doing that. If it turns out that he made a mistake or overlooked something, then it goes into.
So they'll just dig it out, because I've seen that park on the creek side. It comes all the way up to the back of those houses back there. That creek comes out of the bed, out of the.
And that may actually have been planned for, because sometimes what you do is you actually plan for the 500-year event to come up to the back of fences, but the 100-year just typical rainstorm, that is contained typically within the creek, but we do always allow for a little bit of leeway. But just
Right.
because it comes up outside of the creek banks doesn't always mean that wasn't a planned situation. It means that people were not expecting the situation. And honestly, we weren't expecting a lot of 500-year events. 500-year events don't mean every 500 years. It means
Right.
how significant that rain event was. And unfortunately, in the last few years, we've had several significant, maybe even in 2015, that could have been a 1,000-year event, just with how, I mean, Taylor was an island. You couldn't get in or out. So I think that we've been seeing a little bit more of rain events, but I don't think that means that we've had bad engineering as far as the city of Hutto is concerned.
Okay. And then I also had some questions. I was seeing the stuff that it says deleted on like page 23 of this, and as far as it says like it was talking about species of trees. Is that something that they're removing the requirement for those types of trees, or what is that?
Yeah, so for that one, the reason it says that I wanted to include my comments in the packet for you guys so you saw where I was coming from. The goal for that statement was to make sure that what they were proposing for planting is a part of the approved list in the UDC. And so that's kind of those two sections. It's saying that they have to select from the approved UDC list.
In recently, since 2006, the landscaping requirements have drastically changed to include more Texas native plants, as was required in 2006. So I think having this actually allows for better diversity and keeping with Texas natives, as opposed to what was allowed in 2006.
So when it says deleted, it's removing those?
No, so
or
yeah.
it's giving more,
Yeah,
taking
so
those
what-
out, more options.
What it says, so it says deleted one of the following species, and it says all species of oak, pecans, elms, and cedar. But basically, what I wanted to do is remove any reference to species and say they have to just meet our UDC.
And the
which has a
UDC
whole-
specifies,
right, which has a whole list of trees.
Okay,
And that
okay.
way, if you update the UDC later with another tree, you don't have to go back and touch a final plot document because it says follow the UDC. So you're
Okay.
making things work better across a multi-year phase development, right? So if we come up with a new, because like right now they just came out with a new mesquite hybrid that has 80% more foliage coverage, but it uses a Texas mesquite with another hybrid and uses 50% less water. Well, if that tree and they think it's going to take off, we could then add that as another mesquite tree that would be allowed or something, but just by adding it to the UDC.
Or conversely, if all of a sudden we got hit with a diseased tree and had to remove something, that is no longer, we're not affecting all of these different documents.
Right. So these were listed here before, and you're just removing it and saying UDC. Okay, got it.
Right.
Makes sense. All right.
So I make a motion to.
Wait,
Sorry.
If I can just wait, one more comment. I actually just want to echo Commissioner Clark in the fact that I think that in terms of preserving the tree, I think that we it's not something we can touch on right now, but I do encourage you to continue down this path and see where it leads. But at this point, and also until that property is part of city jurisdiction, we're limited. Now, if you'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the annexation listed by staff into the PUD as written with the comments and other updates such as the parkland dedication, the CR 132, and the changes to the landscaping such.
All right.
I'll approve it. I mean, I will
Oh,
second it.
Well, we know how you're.
Wrong job.
I have a motion by Commissioner Clark and a second by Commissioner Robinson. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. 5G, consideration of a public hearing and possible recommendation on the proposed specific use permit request for the property located at 103 East Live Oak Street, 0.29 acres more or less of land, lot 9 of the McGee, is it McGee's? Second edition subdivision allowing live work within the OT3 residential transect zone. I'm going to allow staff to give the presentation and also just let commission know that Mr. Pierce is here for any questions that y'all might have.
So this is a request for a specific use permit to allow live work in the OT3 zoning. You can see the property is located at the southwest corner of East Live Oak and Church Street. So per the UDC, live work requires a specific use permit. And so the residence's plan is to have a custom hat shop that is not going to be a retail establishment, but a home office workshop with limited visitors. The business is not dependent on walk-up or drive-up customers, but there will be a showroom set up for displays. Most retail sales are done online or at an event. Again, there are appointments only, no walk-in visitors. So the proposed use conforms to this code. So the future land use map identifies this area as Old Town. The requested use is in compliance. The proposed use is permitted by SUP, and the property is currently platted. So there is a new proposed single-family residence for this site. There's a current home there that they're asking, or that they're planning to move, and then build this one on there. They did get a variance from ZBA for the setback to save a tree, and then they also got a certificate of appropriateness for the home because it's in the Old Town District. And with that, staff recommends approval of the SUP to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, and before we open it up to the commission, this is a public hearing, so I will call a public hearing at 7:59. There's no one signed up to speak, so I will close the public hearing at 7:59 and open it up to the commission.
I have one question. Since I did the variance, do I need to excuse myself?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, I will. Do I have to leave the room or just?
Yes.
Yeah, go.
Go stand in the corner.
So I won't say anything.
No, but you probably should. In all seriousness.
Okay.
You don't have to leave the room.
We can, and if you want, we can go. If you want to meet me over there, we'll go over there.
One comment, kind of a typo, because I catch typos. On the first of your brief slides,
It said dives.
it said dive.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
I noticed that just
Dive
now.
up
I was just going to
customers.
brush past it real
Yep.
quick.
I think that'd be an interesting way to go and look at
Dive up
that. I
customers?
mean,
We are allowing parachuting into
have a
Old
moat,
Town. Yes.
dive in.
And just so y'all are aware, so the way the house is laid out, this area of the house has its own entrance. It's not integral to the house as far as there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pierce, but there's no doors to the workshop from the house.
Okay.
So it's a separate entrance, and so it'll function as its kind of own little area.
And it does have an ADA bathroom.
Will this have parking? Are you going to have parking? I kind of don't understand the concept here.
This lot is.
Mr. Pierce, if you can just go up, just so we have the microphone.
Okay. The lot is 140 foot wide and 90 foot deep. The garage entrance is going to be from the Church Street. It's on a corner lot. It'll have original plan we looked at was to have a 3-car garage, but because of a large tree on that corner, it's in front of that part of the house where you would have a 3rd garage. So we created a workspace, and we're going to have a 2-car garage with a side entrance. Well, the variance that we got was for a setback on Church Street, not on the front street. The front on Live Oak is at 15 foot 6 inches, which is within the requirements of the city. It's 15 to 25. The setback that we got on the side street was 31 foot 2 inches. The reason we did that is to save a large crepe myrtle that's sitting there and to center the house on the lot so it would look more appropriate to the area. Also, this house is 80 foot long. It's got a side entry garage. It's 27 foot deep. And the house is going to have a porch 6 foot wide and 80 foot long. It's going to be as long as the house all the way across the front. The exterior walls are 9 foot. All the doors are 8 foot. There'll be a single door with skylights going into the residence, and then toward the end of the house, there'll be a double door that goes into what we call the workshop area. And my son builds custom-made hats for, I think, 5 or 6 men's shops in Austin right now. He does fedoras, Western hats, all types of derbies, top hats out of 100X felt. And I think right now there's only 38 custom hatters left in the United States. And there's only one felt provider left in the United States, and that's Winchester Hats out of Tennessee. Other than that, felt has to come from South America. But he gets all his felt out of Winchester Hats over in Tennessee. The furthest he shipped a hat is Japan. He made a yellow fedora, like the Dick Tracy movies, for a guy in Japan, and sent it to him.
I think what I was trying to get at, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
This is going to be a home and a business, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you anticipate a lot of traffic coming in?
No.
That's what I meant by parking.
What I was getting at is there's going to be a lot of parking around the house, because the drive with the setback that we've got of 31 feet, when you add the additional feet to the road, there's actually 4 parking spots in the driveway.
Okay.
Besides that, with the Lavo Street expansion that they're working on right now,
right,
there's going to be 3 parallel parking spaces in front of that house.
Okay. I was just concerned.
Yeah, that provides the parking. I just wanted to give you all a little bit of background about it.
Well, my thought was if you're going to have 50, 60, 70 cars a day coming in there and everything, the impact it'd have on that area.
He's lucky if he has one person a month come to the house.
I'm fine. Thank you.
So I just wanted to pull up the kind of, so this is the lot layout, and then this was the floor plan of the house. So you can kind of get an idea, and you can see on the bottom left of the page, there's the workshop, and it has its own entrance with a bathroom, but it doesn't have a connection to the main house.
Okay. I'm comfortable with it. I was just concerned about the possible traffic.
Right. We were too.
And
that's
in that
part
area.
of the reason for the setback.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the special use permit applies to this business. It doesn't transfer with the property.
Correct. This is a
Great question.
Specific to this one. So if for instance they were happened to sell the house in 5 years and somebody else wanted to run whatever business out of there, they'd have to come back before you guys.
Got it.
Great.
Okay. Cool.
Any other questions or discussion?
No. I move that we accept it as written.
I'll second it.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Robinson and a second by Commissioner Wirtz. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ashby, for bringing that up.
Yeah,
That was
sure.
good visual.
I apologize that it wasn't in the presentation.
That's okay.
And
You knew where to get it.
yeah, this one might be okay. We are going to take a 5-minute break at 8:06. 5.
Dr. Thunder. Yeah, just trying to get both boards.
No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not like I have a financial statement.
Yeah, I had to recuse myself from the thing. So, I think Jackson playing ding dong bitch. Might have been something out the door. I could have sworn Jackson. It's kind of cute.
We came at Halloween. Y'all didn't come to the door.
Some did today.
Oh, I don't. He wasn't out today.
Was it?
No.
Bob, how are you doing? Yeah, good. Good to see you. What brings you this? You selling HPC?
Do you have notary?
Okay.
Anywhere that
Yeah, you got still got Curtis over there. Curtis is still.
Yeah, I'll get it out that.
He's the one. Who else is
So
on?
if you don't, then I'll just fill it all out and I'll call you when it's time to use company.
Sure, that's fine.
Sorry about that, Jessica.
I know.
You're the anchor.
If I took myself, no problem.
That's good.
I know. Well, no, because I'm. Well, no, because I technically, if I take the exam, I'm a professional teacher because I took up to just have to take the exam, but I don't need it now that I'm managing my own attendance stuff. Definitely not.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I
asked Sam to
Development's coming in.
Hey, let me get your
That works.
and
so
Okay.
we need the room.
Yeah. Say thank you.
Okay. And if for some reason something like if Had all of a sudden tells you tomorrow we're going then whatever.
My goal is probably to be around 11 because I've got something at 8 that finishes on
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
No, I think it's 12:30 this afternoon. Nobody was here. Well, there were like 6.
I haven't gotten in.
I walk in, one person.
That's what I heard. But I'm a
Did you
so could I get my number?
Yeah.
I've got a thing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I dig that because the touchscreen, I had to hammer that thing.
Yeah, you put touch it.
I was like, come on.
I'll try.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So I had to check mine out again.
So you know you're not going to be able to stay.
Here's what we're trying to figure out.
I want to get this over. I have to
Yeah.
take the pills at 9 o'clock.
All right. Hey Randall.
Probably not. We have a couple other people.
Yeah, I would always call the PD first, just because then they have to check it.
All right.
If you have any other questions.
Really?
call the PD and
Okay.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm already in your subdivision, so you kind of have.
Yep.
All right.
We are going to come back from break at 8:09 and go on to 5H, consideration and possible recommendation on the proposed co-op district re-subdivision of lots 4A, 4B, 5A, and 6A amended plat, 6.0039 acres more or less of land, 10 commercial lots located on Co-op Boulevard and US 79 West.
All right. So, kind of the goal of this plat is to divide up some of these lots to the individual commercial tenants so that they're property owners of their own property, leave the parking as public, that sort of thing. Y'all saw the final plat for this probably 6 months ago. And so as they get signed agreements and different things like that, they're just kind of subdividing the property up. And so it went from 4A, 5A, and 6A to now you can see there's 10 lots, same acreage. So the actual total acreage and the overall kind of layout hasn't really changed. But you can see 6A, they're starting to kind of to break that up a little bit. They are also with this plat dedicating some additional right-of-way to TxDOT for an acceleration lane out of Co-op Boulevard for 79 to allow for traffic to get up to speed before it merges with, people going 45, 50 miles an hour along 79. And that's kind of the close-up of that. And with that, the plat conforms to UDC and state law, and so staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Co-op District re-subdivision of lots 4A, 4B, 5A, and 6A amended plat to City Council.
All right. And I will now I will now open it up to the commission for discussion.
So is this from the city? Who's planning this?
This is the co-op developer, so this is MA Partners.
Okay, and so they're breaking it up based on the tenants that they're getting for that specific area? Okay.
And some of it is also being broken up because the parking has to remain public because it's in a paid and a tourist district. So once we know where those lines are, we're splitting it up so the parking remains public if it's going to be publicly funded, and then they can sell off private individual development lots as well.
Okay.
I think you're going to see this one 18 more times minimum.
Yeah.
Just
25.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, just because of the nature of this, of the development, it's changing, but we've got some really cool announcements coming up, and we've got some awesome permits submitted today for Top Notch and Southside, so.
Is 6A3 the silos? Or is that further back in the crosshatch section?
6A3, I think that is actually where the two main
The big silos
Okay,
for the side.
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then, because that was kind of an odd-shaped lot.
Mhm.
And then, kind of the same question for, what is it, Lot 4D? Which is another odd-shaped lot.
4D is around that other silo that's
Okay,
at the city center.
okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I know previously there was discussion about parking between Lot 5A, what I'm seeing here is Lot 5A and Lot 4B. Has that been ironed out and this is reflecting that, or?
So that's actually not changing in this plat. So, but yeah, that's been ironed out. So that was done with the previous plat, but 5A will be the parking.
Okay.
And so that's the public parking, and then Lot 4B is the south side lot, and then Lot 4E is more public parking.
Got
And then
it.
5A also has the gin building on it.
Or yeah, I'm
Small
sorry,
portion.
that's, yeah.
So it's public parking and then the gin building.
Right, which is a public use,
Okay.
so.
So, yeah, the 4B is going to be parking for both of those essentially.
Well, 4B is the south side site.
Right.
So that's where south side of the building's going, and then they'll have.
But I know they had given over several parking, or a bunch of land that was going to be allowed as dual use, public and for their lot. I remember
I think they'll
something
have
like
some
that.
parking on there,
Okay.
but 4E will be the majority of that public parking.
Okay.
And when you say private lot, that's probably the parking right around that business.
Right, so that'll be geared towards their customers. But, I mean, the goal of the co-op is that all of the parking will be public.
Right.
Just to make it function.
So you could park in front of Southside and come to City Hall if you really wanted to.
So I have a question on that, because, you know, in front of the Goodwill, for example, and Home Depot, you have multiple things that say this business only, and then you can't park anywhere. And I want to make sure we're, like, is that not going to get consumed up for these one businesses
Like,
that aren't
will
even
any of
open
the
half the
tenants
time?
be coming
Tenants
forward?
think they can do it, and then create confusion for the residents in the parking lot not getting towed and such. Because
I know we have someone from MA Partners here that might be able to explain a little bit more about, I think, some of what we've been going through as a staff and then as the developer. I know that there have been some tenants that have been very adamant of how much parking they need and that they need it dedicated to them. I'm not sure how that's been going on the private side. I know because it's mostly PID and TERS dollars and there is public funding, we have to be extremely careful on how we're doing the financing and the payment for some of that parking, only because it is public dollars. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of these other lots come out. But we should not really be seeing anything, just like you see we don't have any signs that say staff parking only right now out there for only staff parking. So on voting days, it gets a little dicey when we're trying to get back from lunch as well. So I don't believe there will be any of the parking signs. Certainly if there are, it's going to have to be a much larger discussion at council just to discuss how that would actually work, because it would have to be privately funded parking at that point. Home Depot and the rest of that development is a private funded. So technically, I think their management association can do that. We really can't hear if it's going to be public funding.
okay, I just wanted to make sure.
But great question.
Because I'm like, if there's something we can do or need to do with doing all these lots, because it's such a big problem.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So if you're saying it's private, would they have to like purchase it, or is it already just gonna be in the contract when they
The land?
Like
do
for
land?
this development?
When you're saying private, I'm just
So-
trying to understand like
Like if it was like a Home Depot, typically it's either
Right, I
in
get
their
that.
purchase price or their rental price or something, or the management association can say, sure, we're agreeing when we lease this to you that you can have those 8 spaces. And it's a private, you know,
I understand that. I'm talking about as regards to the co-op. You're saying public versus you're saying there's some private spaces.
There could be private spaces if there was enough space on a lot, but that would have to be then privately funded for all of the improvements as well.
Right, so the way
Okay.
that this whole thing was set up is that there's been public money used for
Right.
some of the parking, And so that parking has to stay public.
And
So,
even like the
so if it's
tourist
something
side.
near their building and they want to designate as private, they would have to come up with the funding.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So not just the funding for what's going vertical, but the funding for the horizontal work as well.
Other questions, comments? All right, then I will entertain a motion on 5H.
I'll make a motion that we approve 5H as written.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Wirtz and a second by Commissioner Hudson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
So does this mean that we're about to have some more announcements of stuff now that things are getting diced up a little bit?
There he goes, right there.
Oh.
Run away.
Don't run away.
Don't run away.
We're almost done with our meeting. We got one more to go.
No, maybe I think what you'll see going on right now that we know that we can always give you guys information on is that we did get the Top Notch submittal in today for the Top Notch burgers. And then we also have the South Side. I believe that was actually a resubmittal. We've been waiting. They had some brick concerns on their building just because the color that they wanted, I think, was a little bit more expensive than what they were looking for. But that one is coming back in, and then Flicks, you can see they've actually set where the concrete is going to go for their light poles in the parking lot, and all of that work has been getting done. And if you have not seen, not only do those lakes hold a lot of water, as we knew the entire time during construction, but they're actually, the walls are in and they're actually looking amazing.
Yeah, and they're starting the footbridge and...
Yeah, and so the footings for the footbridge are in, and so it's really starting to get real. And then Flicks was actually approved back in April. Staff beat them a little bit at their own game, I think, because their second submittal got in 6 minutes for their approval because their plans were so clean, so huge credit to them. But when they got their approval 6 minutes after submittal, I think they were a little shocked that they had not yet gone out for bid. So they're still going vertical. We just had to get all the horizontal work out of the way for them. But it's all coming along pretty well, and now you see all the street trees are in and some of the benches are in. So it's getting exciting that we're going to have some other users coming up out of the ground.
Wonderful. And it's going on to 5I, discussion and possible recommendation regarding public hearing notification buffer zones for public hearing cases. So turning it over to staff for just want to recommend everything tonight. To talk.
Yeah,
Presentation.
this was more of a discussion item. So a few weeks ago, City Council had requested that we come back and discuss notification buffers because we have been hearing a lot that maybe 200 feet, although that's a state law minimum and we've been meeting that, maybe it's just not big enough and we're not getting the word out. So right now what we do is every property owner that's part of the Williamson County Appraisal District is notified. HOAs are notified, and then it's posted on our website as well. So we do have some form and function of getting the notice out there. It is also posted, I believe, in the Taylor Press. That I know we used to have a Hutto newspaper that was owned by the same group as the Taylor Press, but the Hutto newspaper is no longer a thing, so we still do post in the Taylor Press. I know a lot of people may not get it, but it is there, and we make sure that those are posted, you know, those notification dates. So what we're really looking at is a combination of things. So I really liked what was said at public comment as far as the height of the building. I think if we were going a little bit more intense, that really could be something cool to look at. I know we did that with an SUP on a hotel recently, that for every additional foot over the norm, that they would have an additional foot of setback. Maybe that's something that we could look into. The other portion is that we need to start ensuring that developers are paying for the notifications if we're going to increase that at 200 feet. We have a little bit, you can see here the 200 foot, 118 individual tax parcels were identified through WCAD. So that's who's notified. So you see it really is those that are up close and personal with that development. So 118 staff in the department, we take that on. We have a line item budget for mail outs, and we take that on as a city to get those mailers out. And that's just the 118 for the mail out, but then there's also a few more $100 in the newspaper. So if anything gets tabled, we're doing that twice. So it gets expensive.
I know we send a utility bill to everyone in the city. I don't understand how you can't tie the addresses as an auto print notice in their utility bill every month, because they have to pay for water and sewer somehow, and then you're giving the notice for no additional cost, and it doesn't matter how far away it is.
It doesn't always meet state deadlines for when our meetings fall. So we have a certain amount of 15-day prior, things like that we have to notice based on state law. Yeah, and sometimes we don't know if it's going to go forward.
Well, that was the
yeah, I mean, it's those things of could we send a postcard? Well, some people don't like the postcards because they think that's not enough information, or it's too much information, or it's not personal enough. So we're doing some things online now to try to get the information a little bit more. So really, we started just trying to kind of compare, well, what does 200 get you? What does 300 get you? 500, and then we went to 1,000 because that was brought up by City Council.
So the developer is actually paying for some of this, right? Or
No, not at this time.
Okay, so it comes down to at 200 feet, we're paying. It's costing us. If we're going to extend it, we want to take a look at roping in the developer to be responsible for some of that.
I mean, I think no matter which way we go, we should have the developer paying for this.
Absolutely.
Because there's a number of factors that go into it. It's staff time, it's, envelopes and stamps and things like that the city is paying for at this point, and so we want to make sure that the developer, they're the ones making this request, they should be responsible for the payment.
Absolutely.
And that's how we see most cities doing it, and so that's one of the things we definitely feel like we need to do with this.
Right.
Well,
it's going to be twofold, really. We have to make a decision and have the discussion, but then we also will have to end up changing the fee schedule if that's also a recommendation from the board.
Are we going to have to design something or write out something that has to do with, in his situation, where if it reaches a certain height, that would maybe extend where the notification goes, because there is that privacy issue and things like that.
So that maybe if it's this high, then it's 1,200 square.
Well, we're legally required by state law to do 200 feet.
Correct.
Everybody within 200 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just something I was kind of spitballing on my own. Could we also, as an addition to that, make a requirement to notify the HOA of any property, or an HOA that has property within 500 feet?
I think you're making it too complex.
Well, but
if you look at Hutto, if we look at what Round Rock and Georgetown do, it's just 300 feet, and we have a fee schedule. So you go 33% larger than what the state minimum requires, and you have a fee schedule, and you're done, right?
But I have an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Why? In today's world, anybody who actually cares can look
hold
on
on,
the
hold
website.
on. Okay, for example, you take, let's just take Lakeside.
Are you familiar with that one?
What would be so wrong with, I'm saying it because they're here, okay. What would be so wrong with requiring the developer to go and post a sign at their entrance?
Well,
that's
why I said I'm saying that
300.
every entrance that comes off the road. That way the people that live back on Street Z would be at least have the opportunity to read. And if they're interested in it, they can come to the meeting.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's on the thing. They have to
but here's
$20
the issue.
for on-site
Here's
service.
the issue. Over the last few months, there has been so many residents from subdivisions come to city council, and they're complaining about this.
Mm-hmm.
They're complaining about this, and I understand it. But the law says this, and this is what we do. But in all fairness to, I think, the residents, if we make the developer, I don't care who it is, pay for a sign that says there's a public hearing on the proposed XYZ subdivision or whatever going over here, and it's posted at the entrances of the subdivisions, then every homeowner that goes in and out of that subdivision has the opportunity to read it.
But you can't necessarily put something on someone else's private property as a required notice. You can put it on the company that's building it because we have control over what they do. You can't turn around and sit there and say, well, Legend of Hutto, you want, and I personally don't want a sign sitting on my, let's say all of a sudden there's something going in at Life Point Church there, it's right there on Carl Stern. Like they did some new zoning thing with the thing. I wouldn't want a requirement that I have to have big old sign that's at the front of my neighborhood because I'm not willing to look up enough and pay attention
No,
to my mail.
there would be a sign on Life Point.
That's what I'm saying, life points.
Right, there would be one there. But I'm also going to, I still like the idea of posting a sign at the entrance of a subdivision.
But that's up to the HOA. If they want to post their own sign to let their own residents know about it more, that's up to them.
And see, I would adjust that to the entrance of the development.
Right, that's what I said.
Okay, I mean, that's fine.
From wherever, I mean, like
That's
on
what I said,
this
Round
one.
Rock. If you read Round Rock's one.
This one,
that's
there's a
pretty good.
sign, you know, we know that the access is going to be off of 1660 at Mager. There's a sign at 1660 in Mager saying, this is what's going in here. Here's who to contact.
It doesn't matter to me. I just think we need a much better way of getting the communication out to the citizens of the affected neighborhood.
I absolutely agree.
And going back to the mail out, it's expensive. But what happens if we have to cancel that public hearing? Then we're going to have to redo it again. Okay, that's an additional cost. And if we put it on the developer or whoever's applying for it should pay for it. That's another fee for them. Where, in my opinion, if you have somehow a sign that you can put out on a piece of property where people will see it.
Well, I'm not saying we don't do that. I'm just saying, but you can't say that we then have to get permission to put signs on every single subdivision within 200 feet of that property, just on the property that's being built.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't, because then you're going to get into red tape of, well, what residents in our neighborhood.
And then I would point it to the city website to where that's going to be, because to your point, if something does get canceled,
exactly.
You know, I know
then
we have a
that's
city
something-
website, but I was totally amazed and Rick, you were at city council meetings too. And we've had discussions with residents, and they're totally lost that they didn't even know that we had a website.
And that's why I was saying that the developer needs to provide notice, not just to those property owners, but to the HOA, because
typically the
HOA
is going to be in charge of the green belt or whatever, and
I understand,
they'll get it
but
anyway.
Ours does.
But I remember hearing over and over and over again, people on one side of the street got notice, and people on the other side of the street didn't.
That's because
that's
the people on the other side of the street were more than 200 feet away.
And we don't have public.
And that's ridiculous.
Sorry.
And I agree with you.
That's why we need
It's a good
to have
discussion.
the HOA notified, the HOA management or whatever.
Well, but I don't think we should try to rely on an HOA.
We're not
because what you just
Hold on.
said, the HOA should, because I believe the people here from Lakeside will tell you that their HOA got the notice, and the HOA didn't know what to do with it.
But let me ask this: I don't live in an HOA. If your HOA is receiving notice from a developer and not passing it on to you, is that a reason for the residents of the HOA to have no confidence in that HOA and replace it?
But that's a little bit more difficult to do. So I will say, currently, right now, with 200 feet, if anybody is, if anything is an HOA-owned property, they are given notice. But I would never expect, even living in an HOA, that the management company would actually reach out, because I know that I'm not their only customer.
Right.
And there have been several times where I'm in Travis County and replats are happening, and the only reason I know is because I do frequent the city I live in. I mean, I go and look, but I do this for a living, so I know where to go find it.
Well, I can say this: our HOA does notify us.
Okay.
I mean, they notify the board, and then we turn around and we put it out on Facebook and on our. Okay.
That's great.
And I agree with what Ashley said. You're not going to be able to count on the HOA management companies.
I think we would just hope that potentially they would.
But
a sign like what Commissioner Clark is saying, those are, I would say, mostly staff posted in Round Rock, which does give me a slight pause here, only because I know that we're a pretty lean department, so that would put a little bit more, that staff would have to go set them and then pick them up. I would want to see something maybe a little bit more.
Well, I'm not saying you can say it under there, but I'm just saying if we look at the Round Rock, I think we can do better than the state minimum, and we can have the developers pay for it.
Right. And that's
outside of that, that's it, right? And then we just set a line. We're like, well, right now we do the state minimum. Is it 300 feet? Is it 500 feet? Or is it 300 feet? Because now we're going to be better than the state, and we're going to match at least like what Round Rock and Georgetown do. and then say,
And then do the notices.
and then do the notices to in the thing, and staff can provide a form that they have to go print out and are required to put it on their property, and then say have an addendum if the height is greater than 4 stories, because typically we have to. But the only concern I have with that, we had a conversation where people would notice they wanted, we got into zoning and they wanted a zoning board of adjustment,
Right.
saying they wanted a variance to be able to go higher than something was allowed. Okay, so we went and discussed that, but those things might agree or not and get canceled all the time, and is that going to require a separate notice?
Right.
So, and then if you go with height, then you're adding all that in, and so I'm like, if you just go 300 feet, that means you'd essentially assume if we just stayed at 200 and said 1 foot for every 1 foot of height above 4 stories you have to go, that's 100 feet tall building could go 300 feet out.
Right.
So I think if you just do 300 feet, you just go from there.
And I'm not arguing against
Yeah.
going to 300 feet. All I'm saying
Yeah.
is that if we have if we put a requirement for the developer to put signage up at the entrance to the property being developed, so that people can say,
Well, it's a
"Hey,
reasonable ask to do that for the
this
developer.
is where we go," and a requirement for the developer to notify the HOA management of that adjacent. You know,
So
I
it
don't
can
know
always
if
get a
they
little
can
tricky.
find out that. They may not be able to find out who the HOA is of a department, of a group.
So-
Like that-
So I would offer this up. If they are on file with the city, we have that ability to look it up. We can always send an email or something to whoever we have on file. I know that prior life I worked in Round Rock, and I may have had a hand in this ordinance that you're talking about. So I do know that it's possible to email people in this day and age and
Sorry.
and at least let them know that this is going on. I will tell you, quite frankly, we rarely had a response from the HOAs,
And-
even in something there.
and
but
that's
we
fine.
at least tried.
That's
So,
fine.
so y'all notify the HOA, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Right
that,
now.
So
that,
that's
that's my
already
point.
basically being done by the city.
Well, no.
No, that was during her time in Round
Round
Rock.
Rock's
That was
not
part
here.
of- no.
So the city is not notifying the HOA or any.
The city only notifies if they're owning property within the 200 feet distance right now.
Right. So so they don't notify the HOA at all.
If they own the
Sure.
property, 'cause sometimes they own the
Right.
parkland. HOA owns like the park. Like if you have a
The
basketball
Parkland
court
or the
something.
Green Lakes
Right.
or.
Right.
So if they own that, they're going to get a letter because it's within 200
Okay.
feet of whatever you
But
built.
keep in mind, so with I think the thing here that's important, let me get over to it. So you'll see the 200-foot buffer.
Mhm.
The HOA was notified because of the drainage lot for
Right.
the adjacent to Durango, but otherwise, there's no HOA for downtown.
Right.
And that's why I think it's
Right.
important to look at 200 feet. Did we do enough? Well, we did the minimum, but could we have done better? Yeah, I think we could have.
For instance, if on this slide, if Cottonwood had an HOA, all of that is private lots, homes. The HOA would not be notified as it stands right now because the HOA doesn't have land in the 200-foot zone. What I'm saying is, hey, it touches your community, HOA gets notified. That's on the developer.
And that could be something that we look at.
Yeah.
And
So I think if we go to
that-
300 feet, and then they have a fee schedule that they have to pay with the notice on their property. I think if we do that, they provide. I mean, y'all could give them a rote form within the number, and they have to go print it out at signs
Well,
or
it would
something.
probably be something where we just double check that the HOA mirrors probably what we have on file, and then we'll just put it out. I know that we have a great liaison with the HOAs for the city right now, and so if we have them on file, this would really kind of help get that notification out there of, hey, we need to have you on file, we need to have you updated so that we can send out emails, and that's something that staff can take on in some form or fashion. I would prefer it probably to stay with the city, although I'm sure a developer could sign an affidavit saying that either they've placed a sign or they've done these things. But right now, the public notice actually comes from the city because we'll know the dates and what we want it to say, specifically what we want it to say. So I would prefer that the notices, at least the official notices, come out.
And then just have the developer pay for it, though.
And right, and that's how it has been in most other cities. Is you don't have the developer send out the public notice; it always comes on behalf of the city. So if anything gets returned, you see what gets returned, and we maintain those mailing lists as well.
Okay.
I have been in a city where the developer was required to do the notifications, and it was kind of a headache ensuring that they were done correctly, that they actually went to all the right property owners and that sort of thing.
Sounds
So,
like a lot of
handling
double
it-
checking and.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
handling them internally
And
is
probably
fine.
just as much staff time to do that as to just do it yourself.
And the last thing that I was thinking about was
That's the biggest thing, is the paint.
publicly owned land. Not necessarily by the city, but possibly by the ISD or the county or something like that. We might run into situations where I'm not sure how that notification works.
It's whatever the WCAD has. And so, for instance, the Mustang Creek plat you saw tonight,
Mhm.
the ISD got a notification because they're due north.
Okay.
And so it goes to
Okay.
whatever they register with the county as.
Okay.
Whoever's
That-
paying the property tax on it gets some notice.
Understood.
They don't.
I just wasn't sure. Yeah. Oh, look, we're gonna put it up against the firehouse. Well, the firehouse is owned by who? Who gets that notice?
Chief.
So is staff wanting us to make an official recommendation tonight? Or is this just a open discussion to think and then y'all are going to come back with recommendations for us to vote
It's on
first?
the agenda for this coming week.
We need
Just to
come up with
update
something.
council as to what the discussion was.
Yeah,
So if we
so
can
we
just
don't
have
have
some bullet points that I can discuss Thursday night, I think that would be
Um,
awesome.
I think we need to make a motion of some recommendations that's officially listed.
I do too. I'd like to say something before we
Oh,
start
absolutely,
making
ma'am.
it.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. I want to circle back to the height thing. First of all, I actually think what's laid out with Round Rock is really great. I like the 300, and I like all of the fee structures, and having the legal notice sign, physical signs up. I think is something we've been lacking for a long time.
I don't know if we need to charge them for a paper, and don't know if it makes sense because I don't know anyone that gets the Taylor newspaper in Hutto. Community impact letter goes everywhere.
Yes.
Could we do?
Yes.
You know,
No.
but, like,
Oh.
It's not
again,
technically, I think, an allowed newspaper for us.
and it's a
The state
timing
has
thing too.
Some intense ruling. So
Okay.
I know it's come up before, and I'm sure you're probably also going to hear about it at the planning conference we're going to. Is there's been a lot of questions of why can't we do email? Why can't it just suffice that we post these online? We do post all of our notices online, and so I would also encourage people during this discussion to sign up to get all the notices that they want. I mean, you can get the agendas, you'll get all the notices, you'll get all the council agendas. You will get bombarded with information, but we can't use community impact. We have to use the press. So even if it's something of, hey, you know what, we already take on the posting of the notice in the paper and we'll still fund that, but have them then offset, certainly if it's signage, if it's something that the city has to go print and it's just, some
I'm just
sign.
saying, why is it chosen Taylor instead of the Austin American Statesman, for example?
Some
or
of it's
something?
cost, honestly.
But if we're
Also-
charging the developer,
Well, but there-
also, I believe the Taylor paper is considered the official newspaper.
Yeah.
right, so it's the official
Okay.
newspaper, and so all of our notices, whether that be voting or anything like that, go through there. And so we couldn't, unless we have an additional fee on the developer, run it in another paper.
okay.
Because that wouldn't suffice for the state requirement for notifications.
I understand.
Okay, so back to height.
Again, react.
And I don't know if there's something, because the ZBA stuff, I think it gets into a little bit of a different thing. So, like for example, the church steeple
Right.
height.
Yeah. Because now that's 75 feet, you can technically see it. So I'm just saying, like, you.
So can we make? So could height though be something about a an
Or
actual
usable space?
a usable building space, or verbiage that
Occupied space.
an occupied space. So you're still having the height variances that have to go to ZBA for things like that. But that if it's a hotel or an apartment or a multi-story office building, things of that sort, do have maybe a little bit of a larger. I think we get into it. It's a hard thing for sliding scales, but to figure out something.
Something as simple as 100 feet per story above the UDC limit.
But how often is that even going to come up,
True.
honestly? I mean, like, you're making a rule that Like, you don't over legislate so much, you make so much things where all these exceptions have to apply. You're overcomplicating it, right? No other city does it that way. It's like, why do we have to be more difficult?
I say we just bump it up to 300 feet, see how that works.
And we can always come back later on. It's
Yeah.
not like it's forever. Once you make this one decision,
Right.
it's never going to change. It's not.
It is.
It's not. I guarantee.
We can't solve for everything right now. We don't know what it's going to look like. But I think that ideally, I think we're all just, if we just go with the 300 feet, which is 100 feet more than what we're doing right now, it's a much better coverage than what we have. I think it's acceptable. And whoever brought it up earlier, yeah, if we need to come back and revisit it, let's revisit it. But we don't want to make it too egregious for the developers. But we also don't want to be spending it out of our tax dollars either on this. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more because you got an additional, circumference you got to deal with. But there's a balance we got to
So
do.
just for clarification, the 300 feet, that would be for all plats, replats, all the things. So ZBA, that's the understanding, because it won't just be for zoning applications.
Mhm.
It would be for every application that we have a public hearing on.
Would it be good to tier that, or you want to,
The only one I could think of potentially would be replats, only because it truly is. I mean, it's defining the
Well, like
universe.
Pflugerville says replats are 200 feet.
Right. So I would say for potentially replats or maybe a variance option, because a lot of times variances are, somebody wants a 5-foot setback and it's just for one single homeowner. Maybe that's where we knock it back down to 200 feet. Then again, a lot of times for variances, it is a single homeowner. So how much do you want to overburden a single homeowner from being able to get something done?
Right.
So that's
Well, but if you're doing $1 per letter, and it's, well, that does bring up a question. So, for example, the ZBA, before they bought a piece of property and they're moving a house 10 feet so they don't take out a tree, okay, for the setback. So that's a variance. So now we have to send out notices. Y'all had to send out notices to every. So do we need to say, because we know? Can we make leave the limit for residential as 200?
I would say probably do it.
But commercial has to be 300, because then you've got noise, pollution, traffic.
For variances, though.
For variances.
Yeah, as opposed, but if it's a preliminary plat, then it's 300.
Right.
Because that's still residential. I'm
right. Yeah. But preliminary plat.
Well, then
that could be
maybe
a
what
big
we do
area.
is we just say it's 300 feet, and if we really get a whole bunch of pushback on it, maybe then we come back and we talk about it, and we can change ordinances. I mean, that's the other I just want to make sure that everybody thinks about, there are going to be some times where this could be a little burdensome for the just general homeowner that needs something. A lot of times, though, because we don't recommend in favor of most variances, a lot of people, we try to figure out how to get to a place of yes with their idea rather than have them go through the variance process to be turned down. Because legally, state law doesn't allow us to recommend in favor of most variances anyway.
So hold on. So variance, is that a separate piece or is that part of this? Because there is
This is just all public notices. So
All public
variances
notices,
have public
okay.
notices, preliminary plats have notices, replats have public notices, and then all zoning.
Well, I guess what I was saying, and yeah, I can see if it's a flat out 300, but I mean, a variance is going to have some sort of a tier to it, depending on what that is, right? Or
You could. So I think that's back to Chairperson Romai's point. I believe it was your point on, do you want to have a commercial and residential? Maybe that was yours, Commissioner Clark.
That was mine.
No,
Sorry,
Clark.
I'm just giving out all.
Yeah.
We
Fine,
look
it's all
similar.
good.
It's fine.
So I would think you could do something where if it's a variance for commercial nature, then it could be the 300 feet, and if it's a variance for a single homeowner, then keep it at the 200.
And that would make sense to me, because a single homeowner, we wouldn't want to burden them with extra feet, and most of the time it's like one lot that's impacting
Right.
them.
I mean, sometimes
versus-
it's as simple as I want a storage shed, but I don't want to have a 5-foot setback. I'd like to have a 3-foot setback because I have this great tree. Can I do that? Is 300 feet and everybody within 300 feet commenting on their saving a tree going to have impact on that in some way, shape, or form? Or is it really more for, hey, by the way, there's a 6-story building going in within 300 feet of your home. Do you want to have input on that.
I'd also ask my other question when we look at the fees. You say currently it says notification is included in fee structure. So how does that break out today on a per letter, like is it $50 and so it's not really, it's like really not covering the cost? So I'm just curious because I mean stamps are 45 cents or whatever it is.
So it's really not covering the cost at this point. Our zoning fees are honestly some of the lowest in Williamson County. So where others are paying, maybe a planned unit development is $5,000, $6,000 plus notification fees. Ours are like $1,200. So it's not really.
Why are we throwing that money away, knowing we're the fastest growing city?
We haven't gotten there yet. I think a lot of it is just that we need to look at. We are starting to make more in development fees. We don't want to appear greedy by any means, and then legally we have to ensure that we're only paying for what we're putting into it. And we haven't been really in the red on development fees, so it has been essentially paying for itself. So it hasn't really been one to tackle because we are doing really well development fee wise. I'm going to be honest, we just had a great October. But if we're going to keep it in the fee structure, that's certainly something we would have to look at. I think going back through this and looking at, are we going to have them pay for signs? Are we going to have them pay for notices or anything else? That is going to open that discussion back up, because I do want to make sure that as we grow, we can continue to have more staff and then have the development also pay for the staff that's needed to be able to review the development. And certainly it'd be nice to maybe have another GIS person, and we're not even charging GIS fees really for any of our any of the work that's done on any of the plats that come forward.
Well, I feel like if, looking at our neighbors, any developer that's working in this area is having these fees in these other areas. So it's not like, all of a sudden, why is this happening in Hutto?
And we can use the legal justification. Well, we jumped up 300 feet, which effectively added at least 40% or more cost, because you're talking about concentric ring, right? So now we have to go to a different fee structure. So that would be my recommendation, is that you look at like the Round Rock fee structure or the $5 per letter with, I think, Lander, that's a really big jump.
Yeah.
I do like, the one thing I do find interesting though is in the Georgetown, if we did it for the single residential variances with 200, if you're going to have the new fee structure be something like the first 50 mailed notices are that, and 50 notices and additional are $1 per letter. That way, there's some. So if a resident is coming in to do just a tree, they know that how many, and you come back and say there are 58 people that would be. We have to mail notices.
It's not. Yeah.
It's $8.
It's a little bit better
than
by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So
No,
I think
I like that.
I
think that covers the residents.
It does. So that would be my kind of a hybrid between the Round Rock and the Georgetown.
That's a good call out. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try to summarize before anybody tries to make a recommendation or anything. So we can make the recommendation of 300 feet to start. We're going to make sure that we are notifying HOAs regardless of where the property, if we know that there's an HOA adjacent, that any HOA adjacent would be notified. And then we would do the fee schedule more similar to Georgetown for residential variances only. So you get the first 50 for residential variance added as just part of your fee schedule. And then we do want signs on site, at least one per frontage. And then we'll probably stick with the $20 per sign, or honestly, because of how limited we are in staff, maybe that's something where we have them take a picture with a date stamp and show us that they posted a sign. And then we'd have to come up with some size requirements. A lot of them are smaller bandit signs. I know that that's pretty much what Round Rock uses, which is a great code enforcement discussion to get into of why we're allowed to post bandit signs but nobody else is. But it could be something where I've been in communities where we actually did 3x5 signs on plywood, especially on the larger corners as you move forward, and you just have one huge kind of set of the diagonal.
Yep.
And then it just directs people back to the city website so they know that something's going on, because you don't always pull over and stop. You just say there was a sign in the middle of the city. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And we had a website specific to, I think we call it the orange sign.
So
you could see where all the development was going on at that point.
If I'm driving on 1660 and I see a little bandit sign in the...
You don't always notice them, so it could be something where we say, here's what our sign
there's a piece of plywood on some steel posts.
Yeah.
What's this?
And if you stop, you got hit right
Yeah.
behind. Yeah.
So are we gonna
does
do
that
anything-
sound summarized?
Are we still going to say anything about residential or like a individual lot?
We
I
did.
think that's-
The state law is 200. You can't change that.
Right. No, I get that.
So
I'm
we said
saying
50.
is
The first
we
50
wouldn't-
would be included in their current fee
Yeah,
structure.
kind of like what they got on Georgetown.
Right, I understand that. So we're just we're just going to go with a blanket 300 and say it doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential. It's going to be only 50 free.
Right.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering if
No, it was 50 free for the residential variance.
So we're going to do, y'all want to do the Round Rock fee schedule for commercial?
Correct.
Okay.
Just making
Anything?
a hybrid.
Anything else that needs to be added?
Well, the only question is $1 per letter for commercial, does that meet the cost that you already need it to be for what you?
It's a lot closer. I mean, we could certainly like break down how much boxes of envelopes are costing us with the Hutto emblem on it and things, but I think $1 is pretty close to covering what it costs at least to get the letter out, including the stamp, as far as, because we buy in such bulk here for the envelope, the piece of paper. It's never fully going to cover staff time, but I think that needs to probably go back into the development fee structure and a bigger discussion on that rather than just a public notice.
Mm-hmm.
And we get our paper from Dunder Mifflin, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
Always.
Good.
Do you want to put anything in there? I know right now the UDC is silent. Do you want to put anything in there just to reiterate that our public notices are online? Or do you think that's just self-explanatory because we already do it?
Say that again. You're asking if we should reiterate
Do you
that.
want to reiterate that we post all of our public notices online? We
I
do.
Yes.
I think, yes, we
Yes.
should have that as part of the ordinance to just outline.
To reiterate that,
Yeah.
be transparent that we do it already, but
Yeah.
to require it. Okay.
And to Commissioner Wirtz's comment earlier, there's a lot of citizens that don't know that we have a we have a city website, so we need to.
And it's awesome, and it's won awards. I mean, come on. But I think we could do
You're
better
welcome.
as far as public notices. I mean, maybe it's a little button or something that you can click on and say what's going on in town. And
Mhm.
we have the development map, but not everybody knows about that on what's going on in the city. Thanks, guys. Really good discussion. Who wants to make a
Okay.
recommendation?
I'll make a recommendation that we recommend to council the discussion notes that you have. There we go.
Made it official. I second that.
I was trying to figure out the correct wording on that.
I think that'll be good. And then, of course, I know several of you usually show up to council, so we'll have that discussion. And then if there is any discussion, we'll obviously bring it back with an ordinance to you at hopefully the next meeting, I think, just beginning of December is the time frame. So that hopefully we can start the new year off on the right foot, having it fully approved through council, and start implementing some of these changes and seeing if it's helping.
Fantastic. All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Hudson with the second by Commissioner Robinson on 5I. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. And moving on to
That's it?
6, no, the
Oh,
Development
yes.
Services Director report.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have anything?
I don't really have anything other than be kind because staff is traveling to the state planning conference tomorrow.
We don't want to hear it.
In Waco, and Commissioner Clark is going, and so it's going to be awesome.
You're going to learn so much.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
But staff will also be then traveling back for council on Thursday night. So if we look
That was
tired,
poor
and by
planning.
we I mean me. I'm really sorry. It's just going to be a
I
lot.
know.
All right.
But if you
And-
need us, email. We're always available, at least by email.